Today on Bench Briefs, we're looking at Chaudhari v. Canada, a 2026 federal court decision that raises important questions about refugee protection, procedural fairness, and security concerns within Canadian immigration law. This case offers a window into how the courts balance the rights of individuals seeking refuge with the government's duty to protect national security. Mr. Chaudhari is a refugee claimant in Canada who found himself facing removal from the country. The government determined that he was inadmissible on grounds related to security concerns, as well as alleged misrepresentation during his immigration process. Based on these findings, the government excluded him from refugee protection and moved forward with removal proceedings against him. In response, Mr. Chaudhari challenged this decision, arguing that the process used to exclude him was unfair and that the evidence supporting his inadmissibility was insufficient. So, what exactly happened here? Mr. Chaudhari arrived in Canada seeking refugee status, which means he asked the government for protection because he feared persecution in his home country. However, during the assessment of his claim, concerns arose about his background. The government alleged that he posed security risks and that he had misrepresented certain facts in his application. These are serious allegations because they can lead to exclusion from refugee protection under Canadian law and ultimately to removal from the country. The government's decision to exclude him was based on these allegations, but Mr. Chaudhari argued that the process was flawed. He said he was not given a fair chance to respond to the security concerns and that the evidence against him was weak or unreliable. He wanted the court to review whether the decision to exclude and remove him was lawful and whether the procedural fairness owed to him had been respected. This brings us to the key legal issues the court had to decide. First, did the decision maker provide procedural fairness to Mr. Chaudhari? Procedural fairness means that the decision-making process must be fair and transparent, giving the individual a meaningful opportunity to respond to the allegations against them. Second, was the evidence sufficient to justify finding him inadmissible on security grounds? And third, did the decision-maker properly apply the legal standards that govern exclusion and removal of refugees under Canadian immigration law? The federal court's analysis focused heavily on these points. On procedural fairness, the court considered whether Mr. Chaudhari was informed of the full case against him and whether he had an adequate chance to respond. This is critical because decisions about exclusion and removal can have life-altering consequences. If the process is unfair, it undermines the legitimacy of the decision and the protection of individual rights. Regarding the evidence, the court examined whether the government had established a reasonable basis to conclude that Mr. Chaudhari posed a security risk or had misrepresented important facts. The standard here is not beyond a reasonable doubt, but there must be credible and sufficient evidence to support such serious findings. Finally, the court reviewed whether the legal framework governing refugee exclusion and removal was properly applied. Canadian immigration law sets out specific criteria and protections for refugees, balancing humanitarian concerns with national security interests. The decision-maker must navigate these complex rules carefully. Why does this case matter? Chaudhari v. Canada highlights the delicate balance between protecting Canada's borders and upholding the rights of vulnerable individuals seeking refuge. It underscores the importance of procedural fairness in immigration decisions, especially when someone's liberty and safety are at stake. The case also shows how courts scrutinize government decisions involving security allegations, ensuring that these claims are backed by solid evidence and that legal standards are followed. In a broader sense, this decision reinforces that even when national security is involved, the rule of law and fair process cannot be set aside. For refugee claimants, it's a reminder that they are entitled to fair treatment under Canadian law. For the government, it emphasizes the need for careful and transparent decision-making. That's it for today's episode of Bench Briefs. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time for another look at the cases shaping Canadian law.